Well, yesterday was the Marine Corps' 245th birthday. Today, we are celebrating Veterans Day. Here to discuss West Virginia World War II U.S. Marine Corps veteran Roscoe Mullins with us and talk about his book, 40 Thieves of Saipan, is author Joseph Tachovsky. Good morning, Joseph. Thanks for talking with us.
Well, thank you for having me on today.
Yes, okay. What inspired you to write this book? I know you have a connection there with your dad and his involvement in the Marines, but tell us what inspired you.
Sure. He actually founded and led this platoon. And what inspired me to do it was a eulogy that was delivered at his funeral. Otherwise, he never talked about the war. He never spoke about the war. And it was only until his death in 2011, and this gentleman got up and delivered this kind of jaw-dropping eulogy about the first time that he met Dad at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And that is what prompted me to open his footlocker that was kept in the garage. And that was just a trove of memorabilia. It was like opening up a big Christmas package and learning things about him that he never discussed. And one of the items in the locker was this Scout Sniper platoon roster from Saipan.
Wow. And you didn't know all of this was right out there in your garage. That's amazing.
No, it was something that he never opened and never even talked about, never discussed.
So tell us how the connection with Roscoe Mullins, how did you, I guess, get some of these great stories and memories from him?
Well, I went down the platoon roster and searched those that were still alive, and Roscoe was one of them. And the first time I drove up to his home, he was waiting outside for me. And when I got out of the car, he said, "You look just like your dad."
Oh, wow.
And I think what made it easier for him to open up to me about his wartime experiences was one of the fellows on the platoon roster was a William F. Knuppel. And this fellow, Bill Knuppel, was my dad's Marine Corps buddy that we'd visit all the time in Arizona. And unlike Dad, who never talked about the war, Bill was a walking, talking encyclopedia. And he shared intimate stories about the platoon, things that only you would know if you had been there. So knowing things like the pig roast and Martin Dyer really warmed me up to not only Roscoe, but all of the other surviving members that I was able to talk with, as though I was just another one of their buddies. And that got all of the stories flowing.
Wow, what a nice connection now that you have with them. So one thing I want to know, why was your father's platoon nicknamed the 40 Thieves?
Well, Marines of World War II were notorious thieves. They were the most ill-equipped branch of service in World War II. In fact, when they first went into Guadalcanal, they went in with weapons, rations, and uniforms that were left over from World War I.
Gosh, wow.
And since this platoon of Dad's was a unique platoon, there was only one other platoon like it in the Marine Corps deployed in the Pacific during World War II. And one of his prerequisites for being in the platoon, because he chose these 40 guys from over 100 volunteers, was if they had served brig time. And his reasoning behind that was, if a guy had been thrown in the brig for brawling, that showed that he'd been in a tough spot and he could handle himself. The loser goes to the infirmary and the winner goes to the brig. Wow. So the guy in the brig is the kind of guy that he wants.
Yeah. What amazing stories you have, and have been able to compile them all together. So tell us about, I understand you're going to donate a significant portion of your proceeds from this book to veteran charities. Tell us about that as well.
Correct. My co-author, Cindy, and I determined that when we would be fortunate enough to have this book published, that we would honor my father's sentiment that we don't do enough for our veterans. Not only did my dad think this, Roscoe would say this, all of the other fellows would say that we don't do enough for our veterans. And knowing that, I'd be a poor excuse of a son if I took all of these gentlemen's stories and just pocketed on my own. You know, this money is their story. This money deserves to go back to help veterans.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to give back and honor your father. So where can we buy the book? Where can we find it?
Well, shop local if you can, because it should be in any bookstore. We sold out of our first printing, and the second one was delayed a little bit because of the virus. But now it's back in stock, so it's on any online venue that you have, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. But a local bookstore could get it in too if you want to shop local.
Great. And remind us of the full title, and you mentioned you had a co-author there.
Sure, Cynthia Kroc and I. The book is called 40 Thieves on Saipan.
Wonderful. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for sharing your story and your dad's story on this very special day, Veterans Day.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
You know, it's always neat hearing stories. You know, all of us have someone in our family. My dad served in the Navy. I have various ancestors who were in various wars. We all have relatives.
Yep.
And it's just neat to hear their stories.
Well, that has a local flair to it.
Yeah, yeah. Roscoe, who was talking about, grew up in Culloden, and it's just nice to honor them today especially, but really we should honor our veterans every day.
Well, and I know personal friends who are veterans, sometimes they're reticent to talk about their service.
It is tough.
And we get it. But this is the day to say, hey, are you okay? Is this, you know, thanks for your service, and tell me about what you did, and you know, give them the honor they deserve for what they went through. And today's the day for that.
Yeah, very special day.
Well, after the break here.